Hello, everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Eljay Johnsen Show. This show airs every single Saturday at 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, unless specified otherwise over on Twitter, where you can get weekly updates and a guest announcement every single Tuesday. If you have any questions over the week, or want to ask a question to any of the guests, make sure to head on over to my email at ljjohnson@gmail.com. Alright, so I am incredibly excited for my next guest. He is the author of the first book in the Hamden Chronicles, my apologies, of the Multiverse of Max Tovey, and the co-creator of LEGO BIONICLE, which I'm sure you are all quite familiar with. It is, of course, the one, the only Alastair Swinnerton. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
My pleasure. How are you doing?
Doing quite well. It's actually a little bit of a cooler day. The weather's finally coming to a more reasonable temperature for me.
Yeah, well, you know us Brits and weather. We love discussing it.
Yeah, maybe this is just a stereotype, but from one of my friends who
It's true.
lives across the pond, she often corroborates it's cloudy over there, quite often.
Yeah. And pouring with rain.
Oh, goodness.
It wouldn't be England if it wasn't.
If you want, we can trade. I mean, I don't know how we can actually get that to work, but, I'm willing to try.
You know what? I often thought maybe I could live in California at 68 all the time, but that would be dull.
Yeah, I've lived there, and that's exactly one of the reasons I don't like California weather.
Yeah.
Just
It wouldn't be anything to talk about at all.
exactly. No, it's awfully boring. And move to another place, and wow, is that snow? I can't believe that. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But
Anyway.
yes, so obviously enough, we have a lot to discuss, and let's waste no time. So the first question I usually ask is, how did you get into what you do, writing, producing, being involved in all of this? How did you kind of start? What was your inspiration for getting into that profession?
Well, I was at college in Manchester in the mid-'80s. I lived down the road from an animation company called Cosgrove Hall, who made the legendary Danger Mouse and Count Duckula and all that sort of stuff. And I just became friends with some of them. We hung out in bars like you do. And I used to watch them go to the pub for lunch and drink quite a lot and come up with stupid ideas for Danger Mouse and then go back and make them. I thought, that sounds like a good thing to do for a living.
Fair enough, perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, so a few years later I actually started trying to do it, and then a few years after that I kind of got my first gig.
Okay, and what was that? Because obviously enough, you have an extensive backlog of projects.
Yeah, well, the first big one, I guess, the first series I got onto was a thing called The Legends of Treasure Island, which was ITV mid-90s. I think I started working on it in 94. A friend of mine, actually from Cosgrove Hall, was one of the directors of it, and he just needed somebody to type. They were trying to do it all on storyboard, no script writers, and they very quickly realized they at least needed somebody to type up their storyboards into script format. So they paid me to do that, and then they realized actually they needed a real script writer, and I was in the office, and so I started writing scripts, and next thing you know, it wins a British Animation Award, and that was kind of the beginning of that.
I see. Huh, so this isn't something
kind
that...
of luck.
Yeah. So you wouldn't say this is something that you went into going, yeah, okay. You didn't, I would say, go to school deliberately to become a scriptwriter or an author.
No, not at all. No, I did a design degree, sort of junior architecture thing.
Okay.
But by the end of I got the degree, but by the end of that, I knew I wanted to write something. And I was already friends with these Cosgrove Hall guys, and I spent the next few years trying to become an animation writer. And yes, as luck would have it, one of my friends was in the lift with one of the other friends, and that's how Treasure Island started.
I see. Interesting. Now,
Yeah.
after that point, once you got started, I assume, based on several things I've read that you've written, that you kind of developed a love for writing, because you said one of your loves would be writing novels, as is the case with
Yeah,
Max Tovey.
I I tried to do that in the early days. For several years, I wrote several novels, one of which almost got published.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was trying to get novels published, the Treasure Island thing came along, and I thought, okay, that'll pay some bills.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that, and then I got more work after that, and I kind of forgot about writing novels for quite a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and became an animation scriptwriter.
I see. Interesting.
So
Now,
yeah, I'd always written. I'd always written from an early age,
mm-hmm.
stories, whatever. And I rediscovered writing when I was at college doing the design degree, and kind of had fun doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, eventually I turned it into a career. Yay!
Yeah, no, I can kind of tell. It's impressive.
Yeah, it's the most fun thing you can do with your clothes on.
Fair enough. Now, obviously enough, I'm not too much of a writer myself, so this is an interesting field for me to hear about. Back then, what do you find to be the most challenging door to entry when it comes to becoming a writer of anything?
I dropped lucky. I happened to know people, and like I say, I got that Treasure Island job, which then got me into the offices of the various broadcasters, particularly Central TV, which was part of ITV at the time, in independent television over here.
Mm-hmm.
And they liked what I did, and offered me more. So I accidentally broke down the door, having been trying to break it down for several years before that. I mean, I was being introduced to every producer in London, but they didn't want to take me on because I hadn't done anything, and you can't do anything until you've done something.
Yeah, need experience to get experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the whole equity card thing.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of snuck in through the back door and then pretended to be a writer for the next 30 odd years or whatever. There's a lot of imposter syndrome going on.
Yeah, no, I see. Well, I think after a point, if you pretend for so long, eventually, you stop pretending. Of course.
Yeah, I became a writer. People actually think I am one. It's amazing.
Excuse me,
I started hanging out at animation festivals, and then started going to the markets, the MIP TV and MIPCOM in Cannes, and Annecy Animation Festival, and Cardiff Animation Festival, as it was back then in the 90s. Just hanging around, hoping to meet people who give me work.
Mm-hmm.
Hanging around in the right bars. It worked. What can I tell you?
Yeah, I think anyone who is familiar with your works can say that. I mean, for instance, I'm surrounded by things that you had a great influence on, and right now I'm holding a book with your name on it. So I would argue that it worked out.
It did. It sold in its hundreds. That was kind of a labor of love, really. I just really wanted to get back to novel writing. The animation industry, I'm still writing scripts. But the animation industry had changed a lot in 10 years, really. Where is it? Almost 25 now since I got my first paying gig. It went from just being commissioned by the producer, who was directly commissioned by the broadcaster. Now it's international co-productions, and you're pitching storylines into the void. It's in those days they say, right, we want a story like this. Go away and write it. You come back and they go, yeah, that's kind of all right. Well, and then they'd rewrite it and give it to you and say, turn that into a script. It was a lot simpler in those days. It's still great fun, but there's a lot more international politics going on in the industry these days.
It does seem that a lot of things are that way now, especially getting into the entertainment.
It's the nature of the game. Yeah, you can't complain. That's just how it is.
No, absolutely. Now, I do want to get into specifics, of course, and specifically about all your different script writing. What would you say was the most fun and juxtaposed to that, the most challenging project you've worked on as a script writer?
Oh gosh. Well, I always mentioned the Wombles, which was, I don't know whether the Wombles made it to America, but it was a seminal series here. It was some puppets, stop motion puppets, which was actually it was first on in the early '70s when I was a kid, and through various connections, I got asked to write on the remake in the mid to late '90s, and this was something I had watched growing up, and suddenly I was in the studio with the puppets. That was quite exciting. It was very exciting. In fact, it was wonderful. I think I say on my CV I would have paid them to do it. So that was quite fun. I mean, everybody certainly in this country, you say the Wombles and they go, "Oh my God, the Wombles." It wasn't challenging in the slightest. It was just a joy. I think it's one of the few scripts I've ever written that's made it to TV from first draft without any changes. I think I wrote it in about that particular script in about 2 hours flat from start to finish. It's like Wombles were dancing on my keyboard without the age of any pharmaceuticals.
Fair enough. That's always good, clear mind.
Most challenging? Most challenging? I'm Bionicle was incredibly challenging, just because it was such a vast concept. It's a multi-layered, multi-platform concept. That was challenging from the start. I mean, it was huge fun, obviously, because we weren't even breaking rules. We were making new rules. We were creating things that hadn't been done before. So it was. But it was a massive project with hundreds of people employed on it, from books to toys to websites to goodness knows what, with me and Bob and various others at the top of it. That was definitely a challenge, particularly the second release.
Really?
Yeah. Well, we'd done the first one. We didn't know it was going to be this huge thing that it became. It was just one of the projects that Lego were doing, and it just took off massively, as we know. And so the second one was much more challenging because we had, it was already successful, and we had to be as good.
Yeah, I can understand. There's some lofty expectations.
Yeah, no pressure. But we did it. It carried on being fun. I don't know. I mean, I've done series that I won't name that have been multinational collaborations with 4 or 5 different broadcasters, all of whom have their own agendas, all of whom have their own script notes, and ultimately you're making there's an old phrase, a camel is a horse designed by a committee.
Oh my gosh, that's new to me. I love idioms, but I've never heard that one before.
I think it was Ian Fleming that said it, actually. And I've worked on a lot of camels over the years.
Oh goodness.
And you're just pleasing broadcasters, then you're not actually being creative in the slightest. You do some of those. Obviously, I won't name any of them. But yeah, you do them. I mean, you try and do the best you can. You try and have some fun. You try and make some good scripts. That
makes sense.
So those are always challenging. But right now, I'm writing a wonderful little series for a Chinese company called FZ Entertainment. It's a beautiful little thing, and it's just them and their investors. That's it, which is great. It's almost going back to the beginning. So I'm working with one producer who is dealing directly with, say, their finances, and that's it. There's no chain. There's no approval process. It's just me and the producer. And that's really nice. It's called Kona Blue, by the way. I don't know when it comes out, but hopefully soon.
Kona, Kona?
CONABLUE, Kona Blue. Very sweet. It's like a bunch of anthropomorphic sea creatures with mech go around the world solving environmental issues for 4 to 6 year olds. It's great fun.
Huh.
Yeah, it's
Interesting.
pretty sweet. Yeah.
I can't find much info on it. And you said it was a
No,
Chinese
you
company?
won't. There's very little out there. You'll see a few articles in Animation Magazine or one of those things. But it's not broadcast yet. We're still making the series.
Okay.
But hopefully it will come out soon. It's a very nice little thing. There's a lot of work for. There's a lot of Chinese stuff out there, a lot of Indian stuff, and they're fairly fresh to the game, and they're very excited about the whole thing, which is great fun.
So it's obviously no fib to say that you've worked very internationally with a lot of your writing.
Yeah. Very much so. Yeah. I mean, pretty much since the mid-90s, I guess, when the whole international co-productions thing started, mid to late 90s. I did a series for Disney Channel fairly early on, a thing called Amazing Animals,
wow.
which was lovely. Yeah, that was nice. I got an Emmy nomination, not for me personally, but the series did.
Wow.
That was kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I was reading up on a lot of the works that you've done, and there was a blog entry, I think, that you made in 2015, 16?
Oh, God, you read my blog.
I'm sorry. No. I have to do my research. I'm an established journalist. Okay, I'm not an established journalist, but still.
Oh, no.
But
yes. Okay.
I was reading about the tale of Jack Frost, and you were talking... You were talking a little bit about how you had to make a choice between the tale of Jack Frost, which was garnering more of your attention as the days went on, and Bionicle, which you had helped really kickstart.
Yeah. 2003. Yeah, I think we'd done the third release of Bionicle, and I mean, Jack Frost was my snowman. I needed to make something, not just write it. I needed to actually make a show. And I guess by 2003, I'd started trying to, get the money together, get the team together to make the thing. And it just took up all my time. And Bionicle was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The third one was, I'd written the story for the first movie. Sadly, didn't get to write the script, but. A great job was done nonetheless, but a lot of it was my story. But that was about the time when Jack Frost was starting to take over, really. So ultimately, I made the decision not to do any more Bionicle, which I don't know. A lot of the fans, bless them, say that was the best period. I don't know.
Yes. No. I can attest to the era of 2001 to 2003 is community-wide generally regarded as the golden years. No exaggeration. Yeah. That's the common terminology when discussing those 3 years specifically.
It's very flattering. We had a lot of fun, but it did. I mean, after that, it just got even more huge. It really did.
Oh yeah.
Particularly once the movies started coming out. It got massive.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I could have handled that, to be honest. I like to think I would have been able to. But it was, as you can imagine, it was hugely time consuming.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly coming up with the next big one and something bigger than that one and bigger than that one. And,
Yeah.
So on. But they did, the guys who took over from me did a fantastic job. They really did. Greg particularly, he became all powerful. He just took over the whole thing, and he's a great guy. And he really did do it justice, I thought.
Interesting. I was gonna wait to kind of discuss Bionicle, since I think it's an awfully large subject.
We can get to it. I can. I mean, Jack, if you want to talk about most challenging and most rewarding, Jack Frost probably hits both of those buttons.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because it was mine. Well, I mean, obviously, I didn't make the whole thing. My well, the main I say I'm co-producer and co-director, but really the main director and main producer was a guy called Neil Graham, who really saved the thing and made it happen, and just sweated blood over the thing. And without him, it would not have happened at all. So he was the guy who was really making it happen. I just tagged along and got the credit, But it was my baby from the start. I optioned the rights to the book before it was even drawn, because I'd known David, the author illustrator, for a few years. We've been trying to work together for a while, and we never quite managed to get a project off the ground. Mostly because the stuff he'd done before that, he was just the illustrator, not the writer. So it was always difficult to get agreement from both. But he faxed me initial sketches for this one, and said, "Hey, what do you think?" And I looked at him and went, "I just knew that, that's it. I am buying it." So I literally optioned it before I'd even written the thing.
Wow.
I knew it was going to be the one. And yeah, I mean, the book is just gorgeous and delightful, and I hope we did it justice. He's still talking to me, so hopefully we did.
I think so.
And it got a nomination for a BAFTA, so we did all right.
Yeah. No, that's kind of something you were talking about in your blog entry. You were talking about how how you made the choice. It's like, well, we did get nominated for the reward, so I think it paid off.
Yeah, it did. It nearly killed us, but yeah, it did. We did it. Yeah. We did it in a very short time. We really needed far more time, but we didn't have the time because BBC needed it by that Christmas. That was the only job to do it by Christmas 2004. And we should have had like 4 times the money that we did to do it, but we did it nonetheless. And the entire team were just starved. I mean, I should have the credit list in front of me to reel them. But I mean, the likes of Gary Andrews and Nick Kametjo and Ruben Muller, who saved our asses with the editing at the end, they were all complete stars. Bless them. So, but yeah, it was the hardest thing I've ever done, I think, in animation anyway. But yeah, it worked.
Okay. All right. I was going to say...
I know you want to talk about Bionicle.
What was that?
I know you want to talk about Bionicle.
Well, actually, surprisingly enough...
It's a LEGO channel, what can I tell you?
While my love is for definitely Bionicle, I can assure you, the thing that interests me most today, I kid you not, is actually Max Tovey. Because...
Well, that's great. It would be nice to talk about it.
Absolutely. I wanted to leave Bionicle for the end, not just because, like, the big thing at the end, but actually because I feel that may take up the most time. And
sure.
I wanted to get to the novel that you've written now first.
Okay. Yeah.
So, obviously enough, as the book says, right on the front, it says this is book 1 of the Hamden Chronicles. So, go ahead and take us into your headspace, how this started, how you started the novel, your inspirations.
I think I've probably written this down somewhere. I was watching a movie. I won't tell you what it was. I was very bored, and my attention wandered to something as banal as the doorway next to the TV. And we don't live in a very old house. It's like 1950s. And I just had this in my head, wondering, sort of vaguely picturing all the people that would have gone through that doorway in the 60 years or so. And I suddenly had the idea for a kid who could not just imagine those people, but actually see them as like ghostly overlays on reality out of the corner of his eye. And that I grabbed a notebook. I didn't bother. Well, the film carried on. My wife carried on watching it, but I was writing notes furiously at that point. So I came up with the idea of this kid who can basically see the past out of the corner of his eye, and then by mind control, actually put himself in the past and time travel basically by mental ability alone. And that was the beginning of it. And then I thought, okay, what am I going to do with this guy? So I have a deep love of the area that I live in, Somerset, down in the southwest of England. There's a lot of mythology down here. I thought I could tap into some of that. So I did. So he basically, he's a troubled teenager. He has various psychological issues. He spends most of his time in his room. He's on a heavy medication because of these, what they call visions. Nobody really understands what is going on in his head. And he has this constant nightmare of fighting on a hilltop at a place called Ham Hill, which is the largest hill fort in the country, which is just a few miles away from me, fighting against Romans and demons with his grandfather. The trouble is he's never been to Somerset, and he's never met his grandfather. And then one day they go they go to the pub where his grandfather runs, which is actually based on a real pub, which is in the middle of this hill fort. And his grandfather has died, and they're there for the funeral and to sort out his effects and what have you, and sort the pub out. And that night, his grandfather comes to him, and he assumes in a dream, and shows him these objects that are basically buried under the floorboards. Digs them up, and Max has seen these in his dream. He knows what they are. They are the objects that enable his grandfather to time travel. And he picks one up, which is a Roman coin, and he's transported back to the Roman times, and there's battles going on outside the window and what have you. He drops it, and he doesn't think anything of it. Then he wakes up the next morning, and that's actually when he discovers that his grandfather's died. And he realizes that his grandfather had actually come to him for real. He dives back up to his bedroom that he's staying in, rips up the floorboards, and finds this box with these objects in. And he at that point realizes that he really is a time traveler, and that's pretty much where the story starts. And after that, it gets quite weird.
Yeah, as I've been discovering.
Yeah, he's basically searching for. He was initially trying to get rid of these objects because they're rather dangerous. But he gets dragged into this quest through time and down into the Celtic underworld called Anoon. There's a lot of Celtic mythology in the whole story, because this is a very Celtic area, which are basically the people who were here before the Romans got here. Everybody assumes they were the Welsh, but actually the Celts covered the whole country, and they would have spoken the same language here as they would have done in Wales at that point. And he goes on an odyssey, which takes him, say, from the Celtic underworld to an alternative 21st century Rome, where the Roman Empire is still in charge, but they've got flying ships. There's a lot in it.
It really sounds like there's a great potential there for a lot of fun to be had.
It's just book one.
Oh my God.
I have started book two.
Oh, really? Excellent.
Well, yeah, I'm about 10,000 words into book two. I just need the time to write it. There's these pesky bills that need paying.
Darn.
And darn them, yes.
Jeez, which is worse, writer's block or bills?
Oh, bills. Very definitely bills.
No hesitation. Yep.
I've been asked about writer's block many times over the years. Never really had it. I've got stuck on points sometimes. And I just take myself to another place, usually the pub.
This mythical pub sounds like a well of inspiration.
Well, that particular pub is great. It is the only pub that's in the middle of a hill fort in the entire country.
Oh, wow.
Although there is one in Amesbury, which is a huge stone circle, which also has a pub in the middle of it, which is possibly more magical. But yeah, it's writer's block's never. The trick with me is to stop having ideas, not to start finding them.
That makes sense.
So yeah, so Max, yeah, I finished it. I'm still very proud of it. I discovered. I mean, it was published by a very small company in America, which I know the people who or the woman rather who runs it, because she's my cousin's daughter, and she decided to get into publishing. I thought, you know what, I'm not having any. I got strung along by an agent for about a year, who then became obvious that she hadn't actually read the book. So I thought, you know what, let's just get it published and see what happens. And then I discovered that the joys of self-published, well, it's not self-published, but near enough. You've got to spend your entire life on Instagram and Twitter and what have you, publicizing the thing. And that's just not my thing. I just need someone to take it away and do that for me, so I can carry on sitting in a pub and coming up with stupid ideas.
Yeah, no, I did hear about it because, oh goodness, someone brought it up to me. Someone had mentioned, hey, so you know Alastair Swinnerton. It's like, yeah, of course, yeah, I know exactly who that is. Well, did you realize he wrote a novel recently? I was like, oh, and of course it takes me roughly up until then to now to actually get around to procuring it and reading it, but it's obviously enough, it's a fascinating, it's a fun time. Like, reading through it, it's just a lot of fun to actually enjoy. And
well, I'm glad you liked it.
Absolutely. And when you were starting it, what made you decide on it being a young adult novel, like as opposed to?
I wanted it to be a teenager, with the kind of issues that I guess I had as a teenager, and that other teenagers that I know or knew at the time also go through. I mean, the anxiety, the shyness, the social awkwardness, but to the nth degree in Max's case, because he has these, this ability to see the past. And I wanted it to be a teenager because I wanted the character to really not know how to control this. If he was an adult, he would have developed coping mechanisms by then. So it needed to be a teenager, I guess, to get my inner teenager out. And it's because also, the 14-year-old, as he is in the first book, they're not all knowing, they're cynical, they're not, they're seeing the world without that layer of experience. So it's, he suddenly finds himself in the Celtic underworld. Oh, right, okay, I'm in the Celtic underworld. Cool. He sees the world in the eyes of a teenage gamer, I guess, where everything is possible, and doesn't think that it isn't possible. So it was more fun doing it that way than trying to write an adult novel. I mean, a grown-up novel. It's a lot more. And obviously I've spent the last 30-odd years writing for children, so it's fairly natural to carry that on into books.
Yeah, I can imagine that there's a lot. Obviously enough, you've gotten a lot of experience doing that, so the crossovers is reasonable.
And writing for grown-ups is hard. You've got to be clever and all sorts of things.
Now, obviously, this novel does not suffer from this critique, but on that note, I do actually want to inquire with you. A lot of times, people either intaking or doing stuff for children's media, especially younger to young teens, preteens possibly, they will say that, well, you don't really have to make this masterpiece of work. It doesn't need to be this really great, well-written anything, because, well, it's just going to be consumed by children.
it's just for children. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's completely wrong. It's harder to write for children than it is for adults. To be honest, I was being a little facetious there.
I get you.
children are far children are far harder to write for.
Mhm.
Uh, because well, it's very easy to, when you're writing for kids, to talk down to them. It's very hard to write at their level. To write stories that involve their experiences. It would be much easier to take these little kid characters and give them adult dialogue and adult voices and adult experiences. It's much harder to do that, and make these kid characters believable to the kids that are watching or reading. But yeah, it's far more rewarding. I mean, when I get with whether it's Bionicle or Jack Frost or Treasure Island or whatever. Actually, that's a good example. I remember just after Treasure Island came out on TV, I was still living in London then. My son was 2 or 3 years old, and he was in the local park. And there was like a rope pirate ship thing there, climbing frame, and he was having fun climbing up and down it with a little girl. And I was sitting on the bench with the girl's mother, and she said, "Oh, she loves this ship. She pretends she's in Treasure Island," and I was just so happy because we'd made something that this kid could use in her fantasy world, which was that's all you can hope for.
Mm-hmm. My goodness. Now, did you immediately
then
go, "Oh well, fancy that"?
Yeah, well, I did.
Island.
Yes. I'm afraid. Well, you can't not do that, can you?
Yeah, but
you gotta get some credit.
I completely understand what you mean, because I obviously enough I've gotten to be involved in and see very firsthand the effects of the work you did for Bionicle. Obviously, it inspired. I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. But that makes a lot of sense, because obviously
the feedback is, I get feedback occasionally. I mean, particularly from people on Twitter, particularly who find me and
really
ask me all sorts of questions, and it's very gratifying to know that it has had that reach, that effect, that it's still loved. I mean, where are we? 17 years later. Good grief. That's quite something.
Yeah, no,
very gratifying, and I'm very, very happy. It obviously it wasn't all my own work. I was just a little cog in the machine. But we Bob and I particularly, I kicked the story off. Actually, no, that's not true. I think the original story came from Bob and Martin, that I then took and threw out and wrote a new one, and sent it back to them, a new version of what they sent me. That's what. Well, I think it's in Wikipedia. If the edit is still there, that's how it happened. But it all started with that first story. That basically it was me, Bob, and Martin and Christian at Advance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard, obviously enough, over time, many fans of the series have heard inklings of a variety of things that came down from the early days, like Boneheads of Voodoo Island.
Boneheads of Voodoo Island, that is what it was called when I got it.
Yeah.
It was it was actually 4 pages, I think. 3.5 pages. Somewhere, I may have the original somewhere, I don't know.
Oh my gosh. I can only imagine what that looks like, especially compared to what it ended up as. Like 4 pages of what?
Yeah, I couldn't possibly tell you. I think that even the title Boneheads of Voodoo Island only came out a few years ago.
Yeah, it's fairly recent.
Public eye years ago. It was it was similar to what I repitched back at them, but from a different angle. So it was this island with these characters who didn't really know why they were there. It's like Lost. Good heavens!
Oh boy.
But I created the whole robot planetary evacuation ship thing, which I think we can talk about now.
Yeah, no, I think
that was a big secret for a while.
Mm-hmm. I see.
And the world that is Bionicle or became Bionicle was what I rewrote and sent back to them.
Mm-hmm.
But the story originally started with Bob and Martin,
mm-hmm.
and one toy which I still have. I think it was a prototype that Martin, the first meeting I ever had up there, up in Denmark.
I remember reading about that. I saw that you had posted a photo of the figure on Twitter, and then I read through the blog entry where you talked like, oh yeah, they were kind of just playing with it in the background. They ended up giving it to me.
They were.
Like, oh wow.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
It's
like the only toy I still have. I mean, that was part of my contract. Part of my contract, I insisted I got a copy of all the toys because obviously my son Fred was of that age then. It was 2001, so he would have been 8, 9 or so. So he was completely Bionicle age. So yeah, I got given toys.
That's perfectly reasonable.
It was the only contract I've ever had that had toys in it.
Well, you know what they say, Lego only appreciates Lego figures. They only get
absolutely
nicer on the market. No, but anyway. But
but I kept that one. All the others I think were donated to younger children of friends as mine got older. Mm-hmm. But I kept that one. Yeah,
that makes sense.
It was the one Martin was playing with through the whole meeting, ignoring everybody.
See, that's just such a fascinating concept, especially someone like me, because that figure in specific, like that was the one I always gravitated toward. Like if you've seen my picture on Twitter, you'll see me with an actual full-size mask, as it were, of that one specifically. So like hearing you just talk so casually about, oh, yeah, they just had a prototype. They're just messing around with it in the background. It's kind of surreal. It's funny.
It was. Well, the weird thing was because they'd sent out a whole. Again, there's stories out there. They'd sent out a whole bunch of one-pagers back in 99 99-ish, to anybody they could find, basically, any writer they could find. Mm-hmm. And I had the script writing company at the time. One of the writers, Keith Crumpton, had already done a bit of work for Lego, so he told, I guess, Bob that he was working with this bunch of writers. So they sent us, split them up between us. We went, okay, well, you take that one, I'll take that one. And I just grabbed this one and I looked at it. Yeah, okay, I'll have a go at that. And that was Boneheads. What happened to the other ones? I have no idea.
Understandable.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
So yeah, it just happened. It fell on my lap. Mm-hmm. So I had to go at it, send it back, and I worked it backwards and forwards with Bob for a while before we went out to Billund, and I thought, by the time we got out to Billund, I thought, okay, it's all a done deal, great, we'll go. But it turned out that Bob hadn't actually told anybody about it. Oh, so no. I got there. I got there and was put in front of a whiteboard and basically told to pitch my version of the story at the bosses, at Eric and all the rest of them, which was a bit scary. But I thought it was a done deal. I'd already been paid some. But no, it wasn't. But fortunately, they got the idea and liked it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't called Bionicle at that time. It actually didn't have a name at that.
Oh wow! Goodness, that's early.
Yeah. They, I think Eric, came up with. Actually, no, I can't remember who came up with Bionicle because we were all trying to think of names. I think I have mentioned writing that my name that I came up with was Evoids, evolutionary droids.
Oh, that's right. I remember reading about that.
Yeah, but Eric came to me after the meeting and said, "What do you think of Bionicle? Biological Chronicle? Yeah, that's kind of cool. Damn." And yeah, it became Bionicle.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So,
Yes.
my general understanding was always, and I think this is still a lot of people's understandings of your involvement was, and there's actually a bit of a story here I have for you, which is kind of amusing.
Okay.
But the understanding a lot of people would have was that you were brought on to at the very least write the original story Bible for the first year, and
Yeah.
then you
Well,
also helped with
yeah.
Mask of Light.
Yeah. No, Mask of Light came later. As I said, I rewrote the few pages that became the genesis of Bionicle. Once the guys in Billund had approved that, then I was sent away to write the story Bible for the whole thing, which went backwards and forwards countless times, whatever. And then there were more Billund and Copenhagen and wherever, Slough, not quite as glamorous, but that's LEGO's headquarters over here. So at the time, there was obviously we didn't know what it was going to do, so there were only really vague plans of the next one. We were just concentrating on the first one. Mask of Light came later, much later. The idea for it wasn't even the idea for a movie, I don't think, initially. It was I can't remember what it was the idea for, but I was on the plane over to Billund. I came up with the idea of the Seventh Tower, about the central character being a kid and not being a big hulky hero thing, which I kind of liked, and that obviously became the genesis of the movie. But that was a while later than the first story Bible. I think that was after Borok, I think.
Oh yeah, no, well, it's about a year and a half or so that people
It
got
was
to
a good while
finally see
afterwards.
it.
So no, I was paid to to do the whole story Bible, and then all the character development and some of the cross pollination to working with the web guys and the packaging people and but there was even a game as we know, which I believe there are copies of somewhere.
Fun fact, I don't know if you heard, that game actually just this year got leaked in its entirety.
I heard something about it.
Yep. No, big deal.
I mean, bottom line is, it was cancelled because it wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
The game didn't match up to the rest of what we'd done. So they cancelled it. They were very picky.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's essentially
what
we heard.
So the first one, it did nicely. So obviously immediately we were starting on. So then they started planning for lots more. I was in a meeting up in Edinburgh. My company's offices were up in Edinburgh. Bob was up there, and oh Lord, I can't remember his name. The guy from Miramax. Can't remember his name. And he was kind of the main liaison with Bob, and they were sitting in the corner of the Scottish Malt Whisky Society offices, which were next door to ours, and they were much bigger. We always used those. And they were sitting planning the next 21 years of the thing. It suddenly got very, very big indeed. So I just went from Bible to basically by the third one and the Mask of Light story. Me and Henry were basically they were trying both of us out, and ultimately Henry had screenplay experience. I was just TV. He had he had movie experience, and he did a good job. What can I tell you?
Mm-hmm.
That I actually discovered in a box in the loft the other day. The first draft of that.
Oh wow. Oh wow, my goodness.
Yes.
I suppose that before I let you in my anecdotal story, I do want to ask, what were your thoughts on, since obviously you were a lot more involved than a lot of people even realize, what were your thoughts on how the movie ended up portraying a lot of the characters you helped create, such as obviously enough the six main
I
ones?
love the movie. Yeah, they did a great job. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I loved it. What can I tell you?
Perfect. Good.
The premiere was very silly. We had the premiere in Billund at Legoland, and there was a whole bunch of. It was done up to look like a big Hollywood premiere, and there was a whole bunch of media students were dragged along to stand there and pretend to be screaming fans and what have you. It was very silly.
That sounds like just fun.
We went into their movie theater. It was the red carpet and the whole bit. It was great fun. But we'd been up quite late the night before working on whatever the next one was, but it would have been 3. Working very hard all day. I was fairly exhausted, and I was in the front row of the movie theater sitting next to the big guy from Miramax, whose name again escapes me.
Miramax.
And I managed to fall asleep on his shoulder.
Oh my god.
During the film. I hope I didn't drool.
Wait. Uh-oh. Wait a sec. Which big guy from Miramax?
Oh, he was like the number 2 or whatever. Not Harvey.
Okay, that's what I was like. I was concerned. It's like, oh no. But okay.
No, he wasn't there.
Cool.
No, it was like number 2 or number 3. Oh, I could, if I googled it, I could find.
Fair
I
enough.
can't remember. But he was like big, high up guy. So yes, I managed to fall asleep on his shoulder.
That just sounds
Anyway.
like a fun experience.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, it was doing great going. I remember Bob went over to New York for Christmas, I think it was, and he was in time. Sent me a picture from Times Square with like the Mask of Light poster, or rather electronic poster, miles high on Times Square. That was quite fun.
I can only imagine that being such a surreal feeling, seeing something that you've helped to bring to that location.
Yes, yeah, it was. Obviously, it had success before then.
Of course.
But yeah, nothing quite on that scale.
Yeah. No, it's obviously well documented how well that movie did. Shot to the top of charts all over the place, is massively popular.
Yeah, no, it did pretty well.
Yeah. Now, I will let you know how I first came to learn about you specifically, and your involvement. This is obviously quite a few years back, very, very long time ago. Well, long air quotes. And I was, at the time, involved in another LEGO show, which still runs today. So this is close to a decade ago.
Okay.
And one of my things on that show was we did a small game. It was called Quiz the Whiz, and people would send in questions about a variety of topics, obviously mainly Bionicle. And it would be up to me to try and get the answer right. And if I failed, well, egg on my face. And one of the sent-in questions was, so who wrote the first Bionicle book? And so my basic answer would be, oh, well, it was Kathy Hopka. She wrote the first published novels in 2003.
Right.
And whoever sent the question in said, no. It's Alastair Swinnerton, because he wrote the story Bible. What? Does that count as a book?
Yeah, they kept it quiet, I have to say.
Yeah, it's like, so what are your thoughts? Do you think that counts as a book?
No, not really.
Oh, thank goodness.
More
I'm
It was more like a
vindicated.
pitch for a book, if you like.
Fair enough.
No, I mean, like, it was created by Lego. I was working for Lego. It wasn't like I'd come up with the idea and then sold it to Lego. It
Hmm.
wasn't my show. It was a Lego product, and we weren't touted around as the creators for quite a while.
Hmm.
In fact, it wasn't until I um, casually, I don't know, 5 years ago, looked at the Wikipedia page for Bionicle and realised there was no mention of us whatsoever. So the
Yeah.
joys of Wikipedia, I immediately edited it, and you'll see somewhere. I think Greg was running the Wikipedia page. Actually, I'm not sure. Might be wrong.
Um.
If he wasn't, I apologise, Greg, if you're listening. But yeah, somewhere in the history, buried down deep in the history, there's a whole section called Edit. So it was taken out.
Oh,
Basically,
goodness.
it was I put a thing which I think is still that names the four of us creators,
Hmm.
um, and it was taken out. So I put it back in again, and then it got taken out again.
Oh my
And
goodness.
after a while, and then whoever was running the Wikipedia page, yes, basically put a plea saying, "Please stop editing this."
Oh my gosh.
But eventually, I think it was allowed to stand.
Well,
And
let me see.
yeah, it was. It's a Lego product. It's not my product. It's not
Hmm.
Bob's. It's not Martin's. Um, so quite rightly, it's Lego Bionicle.
Hmm.
But so nobody knew it was the names of the. I get they knew Bob's name obviously because produced the movies and was a little higher up than I was.
Hmm.
But yeah, I felt the need to set the record straight.
Yeah, no, and I think that's important because a lot of what you did, obviously enough, set the groundwork for what it ended up becoming. And again,
Yeah,
like I said very early on, it's no exaggeration by any stretch of the imagination to tell you that the general consensus on the first 3 years are the generally regarded to be the golden years. The first three
well,
that really had a solid through line. It was the only complete trilogy in one place. And it had a very different feel from everything else. Very mythological, and I suppose that's kind of a good subject to get into your
yeah, that was kind of me.
influences.
Yes, the mythological side of it. That was basically what I brought to the table, I guess. Um, as you can see from my book, I carried on doing mythological.
Yeah.
After that, I mean, the whole apart from anything else, you know, after the third one, they pretty much explored most of that world,
Oh yeah.
and that's when the whole Metro Nui stuff started. They needed to expand to get more stories.
Hmm.
So I guess the first three were sort of nicely self-contained, and then they had to start again, basically. And
Hmm.
and again, but Bob and Greg, I mean, there's hundreds of them.
Hmm.
Bob and Greg did a great job.
Did you ever follow it all the way through to
No,
its completion?
not really, to be honest. Um, no, I guess I was too busy. Um, I mean, obviously, I'm still friends with Bob. Um,
Oh really?
uh, kept in touch. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're good friends.
Oh wow.
Um, um, and I kept yes, he kept me informed, if you like. Um, I kept an eye on it,
Hmm.
but I don't. I wouldn't say I followed it slavishly. Certainly,
Hmm.
um, no. Bob and I haven't seen him in a while now, but he's a busy guy.
Yeah, no, that's something I found out because I've of course looked into seeing if he would be interested in being on as well and talk about things, but
Mm.
it seems like he started his own company and he's working on
Yeah,
I think a show now or a movie.
I'm not sure what he's doing right now. Yeah, he's done all sorts of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, he's based in London, so I'm down here, so we didn't see much of each other. Um, I remember once. Where were we? I think we were at the BAFTA thing. chatting, and a guy called Finn Arneson, who was then the head of Cartoon Network in the UK, one of the heads, came in and saw us both together and went, "Oh my God, you know each other? Do something together. Make a show, please." Yeah, I don't think he'd realised, because as I say, at the time nobody really knew who was involved in the thing. So yeah, no, we are good friends.
That's fantastic. Huh. So, what would you say the best parts about working on of course, Bionicle was? What were the greatest takeaways, and what would you say was the most challenging aspect of that specifically to you?
Oh, challenging! Oh God, I mean, keeping the whole world in your head.
Oh goodness.
As it got bigger, you're having to remember so much stuff. Obviously, it was all written down. Just trying to make sure you didn't trip over yourself creating new stuff that hadn't already been done. How they managed to do it, several more generations on it without going over old ground, or without the fans saying, "Oh, hang on a minute, no, he can't do that there because 3 years ago he did that there." All that stuff. I don't know how sitcom writers keep all that stuff in their heads.
Oh goodness.
Soap opera writers. Sorry. The long-running series, it's a nightmare, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, no, especially when things just get so convoluted.
Yeah, I mean that was always the challenge, obviously. Although one particular challenge was coming up with names that didn't mean anything in Maori. Were you aware of the so-called Maori controversy?
Oh yeah, no, I read up on that, and it's that's a bit of a pickle.
Well, I'll tell you exactly what it was. I mean, it was always sort of South Pacific themed thing, sort of Easter Island type place. There was always going to be some sort of Polynesian mythology. It was loosely based on, some of it was Polynesian mythology, and I figured, what, if we're going to come up with names, may as well mean something, not just be random words. So the original Toa, all their names meant what they were, Tahu, fire, etc., etc. In Maori, we got a Maori dictionary. It was before the days really of online dictionaries. I actually went to Foyles in London and bought one.
What? No, yeah. Back in the day.
Yep, I still have it somewhere. We figured, let's make it mean what it's supposed to mean. So we're not, just using the language and ripping off their culture. And a lot of the Maori people felt that way, that we were being honourable to their culture. Sadly, others didn't see it that way. So after that, I think we pretty much invented the Google whack.
Oh my goodness.
Because after that, we had to come up with names that meant absolutely nothing in any language whatsoever on the planet. So I spent half my life coming up with names, stick them in fairly early version of Google, and if it came back with nothing, yep, cool, that's a good name.
That's a rigorous process. No.
It was. So you come up with 0 results, you got it.
Yeah, no, that's maybe you'll be able to kind of clear up a bit of a misconception. A lot of people are under the impression, and I don't know if it's accurate or not, that the Maori people sued Lego and won in court.
It was settled out of court, I think.
Okay, yeah, that's what I come to understand.
Yeah, as far as I know, it was just settled. Everybody was happy afterwards, and I think that there are high up Maoris who always said that they were quite happy with it. We just Lego ultimately, paid them respect and said, yes, we used your language. We hope we used it for the best of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
In trying to portray characters with the same names and so the same high ideals as the. It wasn't really. It wasn't a Maori mythology that we used. It was a cross pollination of various Polynesian ones.
Yeah.
But we use their words because it's there weren't Rapa Nui dictionaries around at the time. Otherwise, we would have used them.
Yeah. I see. Yeah, and I obviously don't have a dog in this conversation anyway because I obviously enjoyed a lot of the influence. I'm not Maori, obviously, but I thought it was a very interesting situation, and I thought that Lego's response was also, it was fascinating. It was interesting to see what they did in response to that. They changed, I think, a total of like 5 things after that.
Yeah.
Like
something like that.
They changed the spelling on 4 names, and then they just outright changed 1 out.
Yeah, pretty much. I couldn't tell you exactly what they did, but yeah, that sounds a bit...
I could, but I don't want to embarrass myself. No, I'm kidding. But
that's all right.
One thing that's a little bit of a fascinating subject pertaining to this is, firstly, you said that you guys tried to make sure that the names of the 6 initial characters reflected their general power, like Tahu meaning fire, Kopaka meaning ice, so on.
Yeah. Actually, originally there were only 4, but Lego said, "Can we have 6? Because we've got 6 colors."
And that makes a lot of sense in hindsight, because it's a lot of
originally it was just 4.
Yeah.
Air, earth, sea, water, whatever. Air, fire, earth, water. Obviously, it's the standard 4 things. But Lego wanted 6 because they had 6 colorways. So we came up with 2 more.
That makes a lot of sense. Like popular shows that would do elemental-based characters, like the one that often comes to mind would be Avatar: The Last Airbender, which was on Cartoon Network, I think.
Yeah.
It's just the 4, and then whoever controls water can also do ice, and whoever controls earth can also do stone. So Bionicle's a bit of an outlier in that instance.
Yeah.
But one thing, and I don't know if you exactly recall this totally, it's been a thing that's come up recently. Somebody has made the claim that the name Liwa is not Maori.
Without looking it up, I couldn't tell you, but that's the dictionary I used.
Fair enough, yeah. That makes sense. And
probably go and find it on the shelf somewhere.
Oh my goodness. It's cool that you still have that, and that you kept it around. Did you keep it around just because it was there, or is it kind of a memento?
Oh no, it's a bit of a memento. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay. Yeah, that's where I got the names from. Was from that dictionary.
Yeah. That's what I would assume.
It may not mean exactly water. It may have meant liquid or whatever. It may not mean exactly water, but Liwa was a cool name. But it meant something watery, certainly.
Okay. All right. Well, in that case, I figure if you're all right, maybe we can get into some questions that were sent in.
Sure.
All right. Awesome. In that case, for everyone listening, go ahead and send in any questions you might have over in the live chat. So anything you want to ask. In the meantime, we have a myriad of emailed questions, and I'm certain you can anticipate.
Just before you ask them,
yes,
if they're about specific details about of stuff that I wrote 17 years ago, you'll forgive me if I can't remember everything.
I'm sorry, but everything you say is absolutely binding about Bionicle, so we have to report it as facts. So if you misremember something, sorry, that's how it's going down in history.
I'll try.
Yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. So the first question, sent in by Everett Whitaker, has a couple questions. The first of which being, what was your least favorite part of working on Bionicle?
I don't think there was one, to be honest. It was great fun.
Oh, fantastic.
No, so there's a simple answer. There wasn't a least favourite part. It was all good fun.
Excellent. Well, that's good to hear, at least. His cheeky bonus question, as he adds, have you ever read anything by author Brandon Sanderson?
No.
Okay. In that case, Everett highly recommends him.
Okay. All right.
All right. The next question, or a few questions sent in, are by Orakume. And they ask, hope your week has been good. Here are the questions. Bionicle had major Polynesian influences early on, but was there any other real-world cultures / myths that would have made it into the story, Greek, Japanese, etc.? And looking back, what would you add?
No, it was specifically Polynesian. That was the area we wanted to get into, and no, we wouldn't have gone. Well, I wouldn't have gone down any other route. Again, simple answer. Sorry.
Fair enough. No, it's simple's good. All right. In that case, there are 3 questions from the next submitter, Leazander. Leazander asks, firstly, what is your favorite novel?
Oh, gosh. That's difficult. I have lots of favorite ones for different reasons. Oh, good grief! I love The World According to Garp. That largely inspired me to want to be a writer. Oh heavens! I mean, stuff I used to read as a teenager. Michael Moorcock. I couldn't. Well, the whole Jewel in the Skull series that got me into fantasy, particularly. Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the comedy genius.
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
P.G. Wodehouse, any of them. Also comedy genius who probably inspired Douglas Adams. I don't know. There's probably a long list. I couldn't give you one absolute definitive favorite book. Mm-hmm. If I had to take it to a desert island, it would be that one. Garp's up there, though.
Okay. All right. The second question, I think we've kind of touched upon this a few different times during this, but the second one is, what do you usually do to find inspiration for a project?
It usually finds me, to be honest. Idea will just pop into my head and I'll write a note down. I've just got boxes full of notebooks full of ideas that I've probably mostly forgotten and will rediscover at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they just come to me. I've been lucky in that respect. Yeah,
that's kind of a cool answer. I was gonna say start a bar tab, but I like that answer. So it's a lot more creative.
Yeah, I kind of touched on that, and it does help.
Yeah.
But usually I'm just, I don't know, if I'm stuck for episode ideas for a series I'm working. Yeah, there are ways I can force ideas to come, but for ideas for my own stuff, no, it just comes.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
I have about 4 or 5 novels, all at about the 10,000 word stage, and I keep going between one or the other because I can't decide which one to carry on with.
Well, sometimes it helps to kind of just get a clean palette and just move on to a bunch of different projects. Like, all right, a little bored working on this one. Maybe I need something to kind of kickstart me and move to another and move to another.
Yeah. Trouble is you don't finish any of them.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it does spread you out. That's true. All right, and the third question from Leazander is, what was your favorite aspect of the final project when it came to Bionicle, be it how the story turned out or how the sets or whatever attached medium?
Oh, favorite part of how it came out? Mm-hmm. Gosh. I just love that it got such a great reception. I mean, none of us were expecting it. I know it's Lego, but they'd never done anything like that before. Mm-hmm. They made bricks. Okay, slicers and what have you was step in the similar direction. But You know, it was just new ground, and to see it taken up so massively was just incredible. You know, you couldn't want for any more validation than the reaction of the fans that still comes. You know, hence I'm on this show.
Yeah, no,
It is quite astonishing.
yeah, no, I can agree with that. It's amazing. All right. In that case, we now have 4 questions from Perry,
Oh,
who is.
that's cheating.
To be fair, I did not
One
instill
each.
any kind of a question limit.
No, it's
But
fine.
awesome. All right. In that case, Perry, who actually has made some really phenomenal Bionicle fan animations. They're actually like they're a wonderful homage and they're really well done.
Okay.
But Perry asks, firstly, what did the premise for Bionicle/Boneheads look like in the initial treatment you received to look over?
Oh, literally, it was 3.5 pages of typing. That was it. There were no pictures. No, I hadn't seen any toys. It was 3.5 pages of writing. That was it.
There's something just really funny to me about that. All
Yeah,
right.
it just sparked something in me, and I turned it into what it became.
All right. In that case, the second question is, how was the plot for Mask of Light taking shape in your version of the script, if you did write any version of the script? And
Oh,
there was, Perry mentions that there were some early solicitations for the movie mentioning the island crumbling into the ocean, or 3 protagonists instead of 2, and are those related to anything you were involved in?
no. To be perfectly honest, I took it down a very different route from what Henry did. And obviously it was the same central characters. I mean, no, my focus was always on the two central characters. Um, it,
Okay.
to be perfectly frank, I can't remember exactly what I did.
No problem. Yeah.
I'm not even sure. I must have a copy of it somewhere. Probably on a backup CD in a box in the loft. But no, I did. I took it down a very different route. It was very much a journey for the two characters, and it wasn't all singing or dancing that Henry did. And it was probably too. It was too much just the two characters. I didn't, and that's why, which is absolutely fine. You know, the central thread of the story was mine. Henry did a great job.
Fair enough. Okay. In that case, Perry's third question is, the first confrontation between the Makuta and the Toa in 2001 was depicted in a lot of different ways through various media. However, how was it described in the story Bible you were a part of?
Well, I mean, I've talked about this. I guess I've talked about this before. I mean, the Makuta, I mean, he became a character. He became a he. I mean, it wasn't even. He became an actual physical character later on. But Makuta never was an actual character. Makuta was a force. I mean, he was. I had him as, to use a phrase that somebody may have used somewhere, the dark side of Matanui. He was the darkness in the system. And I know I've said this in print before. He wasn't an actual figure that you could encounter. He was originally just a force that had an effect on the surroundings that you were in. Later on, they made him into a figure. He became an action figure, but in mine, he wasn't. Like I say, he wasn't even a he. And then there became lots of Makutas. They were all over the place.
Oh yeah. Come 2005, there was a whole clan of them.
Yep. But that's fine. You got to develop these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
But no, it was just a dark force in the original ones.
Okay, so when it started out, when the concept of Makuta for you started, there wasn't even any fight necessarily.
Sorry, there wasn't
Any sort of a fight of sorts.
No.
Okay.
No, it was just a dark force trying to take over the what we later discovered was a ship.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously it wasn't at the time. It was a place, an island, a civilization.
Yeah.
So no, there wasn't a fight.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. In that instance, Perry's fourth question is: Bob Thompson mentioned in an interview that Bionicle initially had 7 books, air quotes books, plotted out. It's been given to understand that after he left the Bionicle team, the story evolved away from that structure, but it'd be cool to hear what some of those original plot projections were, if you are aware of them.
Oh, yeah. I'm afraid you'd have to ask Bob. I'm sorry.
Fair enough.
The simple fact is, I don't know. Actually, I think I said earlier, they started talking about 21 other things.
Oh, my goodness.
Him and Jeff, I just remembered his first name, the Miramax guy. Jeff Tyler. There we go. He and Jeff Tyler were, closeted in the Scottish Malt Whisky Society, and they came up with 21 years.
My goodness. Wow.
Whether they stuck to the story arc that they came up with, I don't know. But yeah, this was after the second one, I think. That would have been, it would, because I was still in Edinburgh, so and I left that company in 2002. So that would have been within the first 2 years of my involvement on it.
Mm-hmm.
They'd come up with 21 other things.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So 7, an understatement.
My goodness. Well, I've heard numerous different times that if there's a public number given by LEGO or anyone from LEGO, there's probably more behind it. So
yep,
that's very fair. In that case, the next email question, last email question before some live comments from the YouTube chat, is from Kelsey Rabi, and she says this. First of all, I want to say thank you, Mr. Swinnerton. You, Bob Thompson, and the rest of the Bionicle team almost single-handedly shaped my lifelong interest in fantasy, storytelling, and world design, and I will always be grateful for that. I've moved many times, but the sand-swept beaches of Matanui will forever be home to me. I've asked you more than my fair share of Bionicle questions, story questions on Twitter, so I trust you wouldn't mind if I inquire about something different this time. One of my favorite aspects about Bionicle in those early years was the strong spiritual and religious undertones, and I similarly enjoyed the many mythological elements in Max Tovey's story. Can you talk a bit about your interest in mythology and where it came from?
Oh, lordy. Fairly early age, to be honest. As far as mythology goes, we grew up with the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, I don't know, Tolkien probably had a lot to do with it. You got to imagine I was 7, I think, when I first read The Lord of the Rings. That would have been in the late 60s when it suddenly became, it had a revival, because it had been forgotten about for years. And then the likes of Zeppelin and whoever started singing about it. And I think I was about 7 or 8. So obviously there's a deep mythology in there. We read it and reread it and reread it for years. Mm-hmm. So I guess it probably started with Tolkien and then developed into an investigation into actual mythology. Which really is underneath pretty much everything I do of my own, whether it's for comedic purposes or not. So, what was the question again? Something about mythology.
No, but just talk a bit about your interest in mythology and where it came from, of course.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere I live, it has its own um, mythology. I'm in Somerset, where I'm currently living, is just full of the stuff you can't move for. It's a sense of history of where you are. I think that really was what Max Tovey was all about.
Mm-hmm.
The knowing in whose footsteps you're treading, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And our history, obviously, in this country goes back an awful long way. But the history I've always been interested in is the pre-Roman, pre-Christian, the ancient beliefs of this country.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everything from well dressing to tree worship to whatever. The very ancient customs of the ancient peoples who transposed what was happening to them in the world, i.e., whether there was an eclipse or whatever, and it all became part of their mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And they eventually created gods or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not particularly interested in the sort of the accepted religions, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
I've never ever put that into anything I've done. Lego particularly wouldn't have let me.
Oh yeah, no, they are quite removed.
We were very, very. I mean, I guess that was also a challenging thing, because it had to be about mythology, but obviously it couldn't be religious in the slightest, which was fine by me. So we created a mythology. Obviously, it had its roots in Polynesia, but we ultimately created a mythology of our own.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that's a long rambling answer. I've always been fascinated in what came before modern civilization and what the people who have always been here, and certainly in Somerset, people have been here for tens of thousands of years, and they've never met what they believed thousands of years ago, and sometimes sorry, dogs have suddenly found something exciting.
Just wanted to chime in.
They've been keeping me very quiet company, bless them. Even though I tried to shut the door, they managed to push it open again.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, there's actually an aside, a little funny story I like to tell about Somerset. A good few years ago now, they found the skeleton in the Cheddar Gorge caves, who became known as Cheddar Man. And the skeleton was about 40,000 years old, back in the last ice age. There was enough DNA material, enough organic material left to do a DNA check, and they found a direct descendant of that 40,000-year-old man.
Wow.
Working in a school a mile and a half. So in 40,000 years, his descendants hadn't moved.
Wow.
Now that's Somerset for you.
Goodness.
We've been here a
gracious.
while. Yeah, it's true.
Wow, that's impressive, honestly. And that's really fascinating, because that obviously lends credence to what you've been saying, that there's a really fascinating history in that area.
Yeah, I mean, if you dug your whole life, you wouldn't find a tenth of it. Every ancient tree, every little pond, had some significance, thousands of years ago.
Wow.
It's walking in the footsteps of your ancestors. What fascinates me. Everywhere I go, I guess that's where I got it from for Max. Is that I have this sense of walking in the footsteps of people who have always walked in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel, you can feel them around you. You can just sense how the landscape has changed. Um, that certainly fascinates me. I've done several blogs on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I saw a few of them, and one of them where you went to, oh goodness, was it the place where the Beatles first played, or it was?
Oh, I went up to Liverpool recently. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, and
Yes.
it's very fascinating. For anyone interested, I don't know if you mind, but it's a very
No, no.
fascinating blog series to kind of to read. But all right. In that case, I would like to specifically thank Kelsey, actually, because she was the one who spoke to you about being on this show, and she was able
Okay. All right.
to
Ah,
forward your email along. So,
that
Kelsey, thank you so very much.
that's her real name. Okay.
She signed
She's
with it.
called.
She said, AKA, I'm not sure. I'll have to inquire. So,
Well,
otherwise,
thank you, Kelsey.
all right. In that case,
Yeah,
we do have a few.
it's her fault then. That's okay.
I will converse with her later.
No,
If it's not cool, then I'll bleep it out.
no, no.
I love bleeping things out. It's a funny
Sure.
sound to me.
No, no. She sent. Yeah, that's her name. She has a Twitter handle that is definitely not feminine. Um,
I think that.
she's asked me a lot of very fascinating questions, and I hope I've given her decent answers over the last a little while now. So
Mhm.
yeah, I guess she got me onto this thing.
Yeah, no,
Thank you, Kelsey. If it doesn't get bleeped out, thank you, Kelsey.
I'm familiar with her username, but yes. So hopefully she's listening, and yeah, I'll hopefully talk to her about it afterwards.
Sure.
Okay. So we do have a few questions. Yes, we do have one more sent in question, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the questions. A few more before we kind of wrap up over on YouTube.
Okay.
We do have a question sent in by Dark Matorin 38.
All right.
His question is this: why was the original story for Bionicle so good? It was all developed quite quickly and was a storyline for younger audiences. However, what do you feel caused it to stand out from previous and future themes that LEGO has made?
Oh no, that I couldn't possibly answer that. That's completely unfair to ask.
Fair enough.
Well, no, anything that came after it, I couldn't possibly comment. But what came before, I mean, they just hadn't done anything like this before.
Mm-hmm.
It's on record. They were desperate to come up with something that would beat Pokemon. I mean, that was the idea. That was the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Because they'd had a loss for the first time in their history. I think in '98. I think
Mm-hmm.
it was '98. And Pokemon was wiping all before it, and they needed to come up with a Pokemon beta,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we did. I mean, it was a very intentional thing, was to come up with something that had the layers and the nuances, the backstory, and the collectability, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
of Pokemon. And I like to think we did that, but you can't possibly compare it to anything that happened before because Lego had never done anything like it before.
Mm-hmm.
So in that respect, I'm quite happy to say it was better than any multi-layered story they'd done before because they hadn't done one.
That makes sense. That's understandable.
Yeah, but anything that came after it, I don't know. Maybe you can only do these things well. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We were working in the dark. We first created the thing,
Mm-hmm.
and we had no idea whether it would go down or not. It was incredibly advanced for Lego. They were quite reticent about it initially. They weren't sure about it at all. But the guys up the top, the likes of Eric and Bob and Martin, they persuaded the very higher ups that it would work, and they were right.
Yeah, no, I would say there's a strong argument to be made for Bionicle keeping the company afloat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it paid a lot of people's wages.
Hmm? All right, I guess we do have some more questions here. This next one by Stephen Armstrong, who asks, "What is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything?"
It's 42. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, it's an easy answer.
Nope, I'll tell you what it is.
Okay.
It's Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Teach your children. Listen to the word.
All right, that's the words
that's
of
the answer
wisdom.
to life. Teach your children well.
Fair enough. I think that's those some good words and a good meaning. All right. And this next question is from Nick Voss, who asks, on the topic of names, were the locations around Matanui intended to be a clue about the robot underneath?
Yeah. Very deeply buried clues, but yes, we're always leaving little clues. Teasing the audience, absolutely.
All right, good. I think, oh goodness, like the name of a lake meant eye, and like the name of a mountain meant nose, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So we did. I couldn't say definitively that those specific examples, but yeah, we did stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. That's cool. Rory Mann asks, are you still in touch with any of the rest of the team aside from Bob?
I hear from Martin occasionally. Other than that, I think I did have a little email back and forth with Greg when they restarted it in 2015.
Oh, wow.
I emailed him and we chatted back and forth a little bit. But no, not really. Just Bob, really.
Okay. I was actually about to ask, like, have you ever worked with Greg Farstein? It's like, oh, but
Well, we sort of overlapped. Before I left, he was on the comics, I think. When I was still doing
he did the
it.
comics to start off
So
with.
yeah, we have sat in meetings. We had story meetings together.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, good guy.
All right. This next question is from Jacob SHPD. I'm not sure if that's an acronym or a shortened name. Maybe it means shepherd. I'm not sure. How do you pronounce LEWA? So,
Liwa.
Oh, thank goodness. Ugh. That warms my heart. I've had many a conversation with many a person who have said it is either Lewa or Lua.
No, it's Liwa.
Oh, yes. No. Excellent. Next question is from Sakota, who asks, how early on was the concept of the Kanohi masks and their meaning/power developed?
Right at the beginning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty much right at the beginning.
That makes sense.
After I'd repitched the thing back at them, I think pretty much straight after that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, understandable.
So yeah, it was always a part of it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Otis Cluck, which is a great name, asks, what is your favorite Bionicle character?
Oh, lordy. I really don't have one.
Fair enough.
No, sorry, very dull. I don't.
Fair enough. No, that works. All right.
Sorry, two seconds. Hang
Okay,
on.
no problem.
Sorry.
No worries.
The door. There are other people in this house, it turns out.
Oh, wow, no. I mean, dogs, and I can make inferences. You mentioned children, so I can assume that you have a wonderful family.
You can assume away.
Fair enough. Rory Mann has another question, and this is specific to the location. Also, any advice on living in London as a freelancer? I'm a musician and not a writer, but I'm hopefully going to be moving to London from Leeds within the next couple of years. Already have contacts there. What is your advice?
Oh, do it. Absolutely. It's just a very expensive place to live. But yeah, do it. It's where everything is.
Fair enough.
Yeah, simple as that. You want to be a musician, a writer, whatever. It's where the world is.
Mm-hmm. All right.
That's where I started. I was there for, various periods, but I was there until 97. When we moved down here. That's when email had just kind of got going, and we didn't have to be tied to actually physically taking scripts into producers. You could email them. It was very revolutionary.
Yeah, no,
It was. You think? I mean, one laughs now, but it was. I mean, we were faxing scripts.
Oh, jeez, that's an
at
old
a,
term.
at a minute a page.
Oh, jeez.
When email came along, changed the world. Thought
Yeah.
I can live anywhere I want. We
Yeah.
came down here.
The internet has
But
definitely revolutionized things. It's
yeah,
incredible.
Yeah, I mean, but London, yeah, do it. But he's got to do London.
There you go. All right. In that case, we do have another question from Nick Voss, and I understand why he's asking this. So his question is, how do you pronounce? And I'm going to spell the name out for you. Kopeke.
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 Oh, it was going to be because we had that must have been a character after me. There was a Kopaka who was Kopaka.
Mm-hmm. This was actually a character that was introduced in the first year in the online game that was made.
Okay.
So understand, I've heard from a few other people who've worked on Bionicle in that same time sphere, specifically Greg Farshty, who said that the story team had absolutely zero to do with that game.
Yeah, no, we didn't. We had nothing to do with it, other than the online stuff obviously being based on what we were doing. Mm-hmm. No, we kind of created the core concept, and then it all spread out from there. There were different teams doing books, the games, everything. We gave them the world, and they went off and ran with it. Mm-hmm. And then, but it was all coordinated back to the likes of Bob, and Leah, and Greg. So I would only have to guess how you pronounce. But I would say it's probably Kopeka.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, there is, as with Liwa, there is multitude of discussions to be had with that one. Some people say it's Kopeke, and some people say it's Kopiki.
If it's Polynesian, if it was Kopiki, it'd be IKI. If it was Polynesian, so I'm going to, unless Greg's listening, and
oh, that'd be nice.
You know what? Maybe I should email him and ask him. I would have pronounced that Kopeka.
Okay.
So there you go. But I didn't. It's not my character, so
fair enough.
That's obviously one they came up with.
All right. Perfectly fair. Let me see here. Cubic asks, what was your favorite year of Bionicle in terms of the sets, the models, and the story?
Oh. Obviously, I'll go back to the first one, just because it was the first one.
Okay.
That's where we created everything.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be the first one.
Fair enough. I mean, I like that answer. That's where I gravitate towards as well. So fair enough.
Yeah, that's where it all started.
Yeah,
those are my babies. Everything else is just coming up with new names. No, that's not true. Mm-hmm. That's the first one.
Okay, excellent. In that case, we'll go ahead with just a few more here. I would like to personally ask, when it came to the Multiverse of Max Tovey, which chapter did you have the most fun writing? Which is your favorite of the first novel?
A lot of them in different ways. I mean, when it's difficult to give it too many give the plot away, but whatever. When they got down into the underworld to Anoon, that was started questing with giants. I mean, that was huge fun. Okay. Childlike giants, throwing exploding things that tasted bananas and custard before they blew your head off. I mean, how much fun do you want to have?
Mm-hmm. Fair
But
enough.
the darker stuff set in the steampunk realm, that was fun too. It's all it's all fun. But yeah, the giants particularly were great fun.
Excellent.
They were, yeah. It's it goes from dark and dangerous to openly comic in places. I I like comic. I like dark and dangerous. The giants were fun.
Okay. Excellent. All right. In that case, this question here is also from Jacob Shepard, which is again going to be my base assumption.
Okay.
And they ask if Makuta was planned to be a dark force. One, was it planned to be something not related to Matanui or a part of him? And two, was Matanui planned to be the light force or just the ship?
No, no. They were two sides of the same thing.
Okay.
Matanui was the ship. It was the soul of the ship. It was Matanui was the thing that guided the ship. It looks after its cargo, i.e., the population of the planet that it had just evacuated.
Mm-hmm.
It was software. It was its soul. It was all of the above. And Makuta was everything that could go wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
It was the dark side. Matanui, yes, was the light side.
Okay.
But they were two sides of the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough. All right. In that case, those have been all the questions. However, there is a statement from someone here.
Okay.
There are a lot of X's in this name, so I'm going to hope that it's pronounced Zentrax. But
Okay.
they wanted to say,
That's Bob Thompson making up a name.
oh my gosh. Zentrax says, sincerely, I can't thank you enough for all the work you did to create this series for us. You've enriched my life greatly, and I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't have Bionicle to grow up with. And multiple people have corroborated that.
That's very kind of you to say. Quite humbling, I have to say.
Well,
It really is.
I can definitely agree with that sentiment, personally.
Thank you. And seriously, thanks to everybody who's written in and what have you. Yeah, it means a hell of a lot. You can. I wrote a blog. A writer friend of mine died last year. Gosh, a little while back anyway. I wrote a blog about her, remembering Erica. If anybody wants to find my feelings on being remembered, it's in that. But to have that kind of response to something I've written, beyond awesome, to use the vernacular.
Yeah, no, I can understand.
No, I'm not being funny. It really is. It's quite indescribable.
Mm-hmm.
Which for a writer is fairly rubbish.
It's okay. Yeah, just my advice would be to catch up on some hip new lingo, and that way you can best describe it that way.
Yeah, I think I'm a little beyond that.
Fair enough.
Thank you. It means a hell of a lot. It really does.
Excellent. All right. Well, in that case, I think we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Sir, it has been nothing short of a blast speaking with you. Your insights are... I mean, I'm not a writer, so I can get away with saying it's indescribable, but I've had a great time talking with you. It's been wonderful. Obviously...
It's been fun.
Obviously enough, I've been a fan of Bionicle. But in addition to that, I've had a wonderful time reading The Multiverse of Max Tovey. I personally am looking forward to the next novel in the series. Well,
buy a million copies of the first one. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I really hope I can get the time to write the second one. There's way more than 2 in that series if I get the time.
Fantastic.
It can run and run. But I'm really very glad you enjoyed it. Again, it means a lot to hear it from somebody who's read it. But
absolutely.
Thank you. And thanks for inviting me on this.
Of course. Absolutely. Thank you for being here. And if you'd like to come on again to talk about the next book in the series or any other project, I'd be more than thrilled to have you on to discuss it.
That'd be great. Thanks.
All right. In that case, as I always ask my guests at the end, is there anywhere on social media that you would like to mention, that you'd like people to follow you on, and anything you'd like them to be aware of?
Oh, I'm on. I do all that stuff on Twitter. I did do Instagram, but account kept getting hacked. I gave up on it.
Oh dear.
I do Twitter. I have my blog site that I don't write on enough, especially the time thing. But that's just alastairswinnerton.com. So just Twitter and the website. That'll do it. And buy the book.
Okay.
He says it's nice.
Yes, can confirm. Seal of approval, which as a non-writer, I don't know how far that goes, but I like it.
No, that's great. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for listening to this episode today. I'll have links to all of those in the description below. And again, I actually do highly recommend The Multiverse of Max Tovey. Book 1, Book 2, however many come out, but especially the first one right now. It's a really, really fun time. I highly recommend going out to get it.
Bless you. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. And once again, thank you all for listening, and thank you all to sending in questions. And thank you, Kelsey, thank you, sir, very kindly for helping get this all sorted and making this happen.
My apologies. Kelsey is a he.
Yeah, clarification made on YouTube, so
I do apologize.
All right. So thank you all for listening. And just as a reminder, Eljay Johnsen Show is aired every single Saturday. The usual time is 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. However, that is subject to change. You can find updates on the show every week, as well as guest announcements every Tuesday, over on my Twitter, @TheEljayJohnson. And if you have any questions you'd like to email in over the week, make sure to send them in to eljayjohnson@gmail.com. Remember, it's JOHNSEN. Trust me, after time, you'll remember it. All right. So thank you all very much. And Alastair, thank you so kindly.
My pleasure. Thank you again.
All right. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.